Good afternoon, everyone. I am Rashmi Mabian, welcoming you to today's panel discussion on digitizing of healthcare and audiology to increase access and affordability. According to WHO 2018 data, the prevalence of hearing impairment in India is around 6.3%, meaning 63 million people suffering from significant auditory loss. The estimated prevalence of adult onset deafness in India is 7.6% and childhood onset deafness is 2%. The reasons for such dismal condition of the auditory health in India are causes such as poor neonatal screening, lack of universal practices according to the said guidelines, equipment related shortcomings, lack of infrastructure, and low priority to hearing impairment related prevention. Moreover, the late onset of hearing impairment in India is very high due to the lack of awareness and follow up by parents after the first reports. This panel discussion aims to shed light on the importance of increasing awareness around screening of hearing and futuristic solutions to address key challenges in hearing care. Today, we have been joined by an eminent panel of experts in hearing care and audiology solutions. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sushant Thapa, General Manager Director Solutions at GenWorks Health, Mr. Shravan, International Clinical Applications Manager, Specialist Audiology at Natus, Mr. Ranjit, Professor of Audiology and Director of Murph Institute of Speech and Hearing, Chennai, and Dr. Prashant Sharma, ENT surgeon at Prime Hospital. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Before going forward, I would like to inform our audience that the panel discussion will be followed by a question and answer session. So, attendees, please feel free to share your questions in the chat window. Now, without any further ado, let's kickstart this panel discussion. The first question is to Dr. Ranjit. How has audiology and hearing care evolved over the last decade, and how is Murph looking at new trends that are emerging in hearing care?
First of all, very good evening to everyone, and thank you so much for Genworks organizing such a wonderful panel discussion. I think this is more relevant to the present times that we are digitalizing everything, and digitalizing healthcare is not a new concept. I think the digitalizing healthcare started some 20 years ago. I think we are slowly crawling in the last 1 year. It's a blessing in disguise thanks to the COVID that digitalizing is moving much more faster. Now, to be very precise to your question, so you're asking, what's the development of the field of audiology in the last decade? I think number one, as you rightly said, the WHO's estimate of prevalence of hearing loss in India is 6.3, but I would like to differ by that. But this is based on the recorded data. But we all know by heart, I think it is almost double, more than that. Okay, 6.3 is a very modest figure, and definitely it's not up to any of the standards that we have measured it. So as the people with hearing loss increases, there's a huge demand for the professionals dealing with the people with hearing loss. So audiologists are the professional deal with them. And to be very precise, the from 2019 to 2029, in the next 10 years, there's going to be 13% growth, 13 to 16% average growth. So 16% growth on the demand for this profession in audiology, which is almost 2 times the average of all the occupations across the world. So, which clearly says that the demand for audiology is because there's a growing need for, there's a growing population with hearing needs. And we all know that this is one of the most important point. So now, as the people age older and older, the onset of hearing loss is setting up. But what we have seen is the onset of hearing loss, what we call it as presbyacusis. Presbyacusis means the hearing loss due to aging. Now, the average onset of presbyacusis was above the age of 65. But now we see it much earlier. We see it somewhere close to 55, 58, So this is very alarming. And we have our own statistics in Murph where we screened people between the age of 17 to 24 We screened close to almost 450 people, and they're all college goers, teenagers. You won't believe 5.5% of this population, okay, has a permanent hearing loss, onset of permanent hearing loss. Now, if you look at these people, the hearing loss is just not because, hearing loud sounds or, an occupational hazard or anything. We have very interesting cause today is called the entertainment induced hearing loss, entertainment induced hearing loss. So this is called the entertainment induced hearing deficits. Now, which means if you take an average hours that a student travels to a university, so especially if you look at in my place, it's almost 30 minutes. And it can vary up to 1 hour to 15 minutes. Now, what does these kids do when they travel? They listen to music. They're always on their iPods, right? And in India is not a very quiet environment. So noise is civilization in this country. It's always loud everywhere. And he has to raise the volume much above the average noise level, whether he's sitting in a metro train or whether he's moving in a bus or a city bus or a motorcycle or whatever it is. So unconsciously, he's been exposed to almost close to 80 to 90 dB constantly for 45 minutes, twice a day, right? Plus the other noises. So I think about it. So if the onset can be at the age of 20, 22, 23, and a permanent hearing loss around 40 to 50 dB, I think about what will happen to him when he reaches the age of 40. Right. So this is something very alarming. And the entertainment noise pollution is something which is completely neglected today. And that's something which is one of the commonest noise pollution today. It has got nothing to do with the occupation, right? Whatever occupation you are. So the way we look at it, the MRF looks at handling this problem is today, the most important thing is the solution is available. We have the solution. So any kind of hearing loss, we can restore hearing further. That's not a problem. The problem today is the awareness. They should know that they will have a hearing loss or this hearing loss can set in hearing loss as a cascading effect on the lifestyle of a person. So hearing loss is not just, I can't hear you, it's just, it impacts listening. It impacts your attention span. It impacts your cognitive skills. It desocializes people. It sets in early onset of memory loss, what we call it as dementia. So all these things are which impacts a person is complete lifestyle. And this awareness is not there. They take hearing for granted, where they take vision more seriously than hearing. And of course, vision is also important. I'm not saying vision is not as important as hearing, but they don't take hearing as serious as a visual defect. So this is something very, very important that we need. So the first and the foremost thing what we work today is on focusing on creating awareness to these youngsters and population at large. And number two is, awareness is just insufficient if there is no availability of testing these people. So that's the next important thing. And this is where the digital technology comes in handy. If you ask a person, you go to an audiological center and do a hearing test, and he's not going to do it. And if I ask one of my friend or one of my colleague or whomever, just go and get your hearing test done. And if in any of the television channel, if they're playing some very popular superstar movies, I think that becomes a priority for them. I've seen that myself. We have experienced it. We see all sorts of patients, right? So the priority for health itself is not taken as a serious thing. They don't prioritize health. In other words, the health takes the least priority in this country. So that's something. So they have to understand that health is more important. Hearing health is equally important than any other serious issues. So another mindset of the people is they will only go to a doctor or an audiologist or a healthcare person if an issue is life-threatening. Even if you counsel them, advise them, the biggest problem in the society that what we feel is the maids at home, the milkman at home, their counseling is taken much more serious than a medical professional. This is all practical things, Right. You say you need to wear a hearing aid, you have a problem, and the maid says, no, no, you don't, you have to wear it. Even I have some problem like that. You don't need to wear it. All sorts of things. This is a simple example of hearing aid. For example, especially we see a lot of kids, and we tell those kids, the parents bring the kids, the child is not speaking till the age of 2.5, 3. And we say, your child has a hearing loss and you need to wear a hearing aid. The grandmother or the milkmaid says, no, 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 even your grandfather, a father spoke at the age of 5, wait for another 2 more years, the child. So the advices, the social stigma. See, these are the things which actually we need to overcome. Unless we overcome all these issues, it's just not a scientific problem. A cultural issues also we need to tackle. So it's not easy to tackle this. What we have today to overcome all this problem is this digital technology, where I can reach your home. You don't have to come to my place. I can reach your home, and then I'm going to do a hearing test for you. Okay, and I'm not going to charge you anything. Okay, so these are the things that will definitely help us to penetrate into the society. See, in spite of the solutions what we have to restore hearing, and even the we don't have solutions to restore vision, but we have solutions to restore hearing even if it is lost completely. In spite of that, the penetration of a hearing aid or a cochlear implant or a brainstem implant or any sort of technology to restore hearing is less than 1%, right? In spite of having the solution. And wearing a spectacle is a fashion statement, but wearing a hearing aid is a social stigma, right? But the impact of hearing loss is much more than the impact of visual loss. So first and the foremost thing is we are working on educating the people on hearing healthcare, educating them on awareness about hearing, parallelly developing a system where the hearing healthcare is available, accessible, affordable, and sustainable. So I hope I answered your question. Is there something more that you want to know from me? You're free to ask.
No, sir, you answered the question in a very holistic manner, and thank you so much for actually bringing out the challenges that we are actually seeing. Coming to you, Dr. Prashant, since we talked about how things have changed and what are the evolving challenges that we are seeing, how has ENT practice changed for you, and what are the geographical perspectives having worked in two different geographies?
Thank you for inviting me on this panel discussion. It's a pleasure being here. And it's been almost 14 years since my master's. So worked in India for 7 years, and for last 7 to 8 years in UAE. Things have been very different here. As we all know that UAE is one of the fastest growing nations in the world. A lot of infrastructure projects coming up every day. And this has got a lot of vibrant atmosphere. Coming on to the ENT practice, what I usually encounter here is, let's talk about the general ENT. The majority of the problem which I come across here is allergies. We know that this is one of the allergy capital of the world. This may be because of the weather, the environment, dust storms, sandstorms, 24/7 we are in air conditioned environment. So what I encounter in my practice is mostly allergies and its effect. Predominantly allergies leading to polyps, kids coming up with a lot of otitis media with effusion, that is there's a water behind the ear leading to hearing deficits if not treated, and asthma. So this is predominantly in my practice in UAE. Coming on to the hearing part, we are fortunate enough to have been following up what is called the National Hearing Screening Program in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi and in Dubai. So when the expectant mothers do visit antenatal clinics, it has been ingrained into them time and again that you have to do a hearing screening program for your child. So all the general practitioners, the gynecologists, the pediatricians, all healthcare professionals, they are pretty much aware about the hearing effects and its subsequent consequences. So I'm a little fortunate enough in that sense that the society is fairly knowledgeable and understanding the effects of hearing losses here. So it has pretty much positive atmosphere. What we notice, or rather what I have encountered in my practice, is there's a lot of consanguineous marriages happening here. So the incidence of hearing loss seen in newborns is relatively higher in comparison to our Indian population. And when it comes to our practice now, since we talk everything about smart watches, smart televisions, smart houses, so we also have smart medicines here. So we are into, thanks to COVID, as Dr. Ranjit said, that everything is digitalized now. Even things here are completely digitalized now. The concept of telemedicine, which is there almost 10 years, is now very much practiced. We are having our electronic medical records are fairly good. What I mean by that is we are completely paperless. So that is a very good thing. And we have a system where it is called the National Unified Medical Record Number. So if a patient comes to me with a hearing problem or any other problem, and if he visits any other center, so they have access to my records. So they can see what lab tests have been done, what radiology, what imaging, what has been done for it. So in a way, we are trying to, cut down on the costs of unnecessary repeat test imaging. So those things are pretty good here. So we have got this unified medical record numbers, so smart digitalization, telemedicine, and then robotic pharmacies have come in here, so which is again very good. So let's say if I write a prescription, if you're talking about geographical perspective, if I write a prescription for a tonsillitis condition or for a hearing deficit, and if that prescription does not match with the medicine which I have given, it immediately shows a red flag. So that way things are a little different, and it is very uh, ambitious projects by the authorities here to digitalize more and more things. So we are fortunate enough to go ahead with these things, and I'm happy that the hearing programs which we are doing here are fairly robust, and people are aware of it. We do conduct a lot of screening program across the universities, schools, even in police centers, the army, military. So it is mandatory for all school children before enrolling, before universities, before jobs. So everyone is screened. So we try to pick them up early. So this is how our practice here. So that's how it is, Ms. Rashmi.
Thank you, Dr. Prashant. Since you talked about the role of technology and how it is also evolving care and hearing impairment, we would like to go to Mr. Shravanand. Since Natus has been around for quite some time, how do you think the company has evolved according to the times? And what are the new products that have a potential to change the way audiology practice is done today?
Thank you. First of all, thank you everyone for inviting me to join the session today. So it's a pleasure. So Natus has started in 1987 with Algo as a hearing screening company, and it has evolved. So today we are a large company that does more than newborn screening. We have evolved together with the hearing audiology industry, with companies that have a history from 1930s onwards and have been leading audiology products in the market like Autometrics, Biologic, ICS, and things like that. And I would say we are quite proud to say that a lot of the innovations that are brought into the market as far as equipments in terms of digital technology, a lot of it was introduced by one of the companies that makes up Natus. An example would be like probably about 20 years back, when audiometers are still something that you are using with a standalone. We introduced computer-based audiometers, and we also introduced databases that share data from a lot of our different equipments into one software. And this can be actually read by another system that uses the same software. So in terms, it's like networking nowadays, EMR nowadays, and this has been something that we've practiced when audiologists would be saying like, "Oh, there are no dials on this equipment. Why am I using a computer instead of equipment, right?" So a lot of times we as manufacturers had to push that. And the idea behind Natus is always about educating. And the primary group that we need to educate is, of course, the healthcare workers themselves. So in this essence, what we have done in this past 10 to 15 years is to actually start academies. So these are academies that are free to be joined by anyone. So you don't have to be actually a healthcare worker or a customer of Natus to join. So we have like the Newborn Care Academy, we have Hearing and Balance Academy. And the main idea behind these academies is to work with local experts, people who are key opinion leaders in their markets, and get them or their voice out to others. Because as manufacturers, we can tell everyone that our products are the best, or we are leading here, doing this, doing that. But only when it's being used in the market, being used by end users, audiologists, ENT doctors, pediatricians, nurses, then what they say becomes more important. So an example would be like towards the last quarter of 2020, we organized about 44 mastermind courses, which are 1 hour courses plus Q&A. And each of these is led by a key opinion leader from any of the countries that we are working with. So we had from Malaysia, we had from Philippines, we had from UK, US, various countries, and in various languages as well. And it was very well accepted. So we had like 13 newborn care topics that we discussed, 31 hearing and balance topics that we discussed. And we had more than 6,000 people attending this, right? So it shows that the need for knowledge is there. And that's what we are trying to push as well. The digital way of learning. So all these are recorded. All this would be available online. So even if you're on the other side of the world, it's like, for example, where I am at, it's about 12 hours away from US. So if they have a program in US that I'm interested in, but it's at 3 a.m. at my time, it's illogical for me to stay up until then. Maybe I can't pay attention as well. So it's recorded and it's available to be viewed at any time. So I still get that knowledge in that sense, right? So that is the vision that the company is trying to move towards, a partnership and trying to promote the latest technologies based on the market demand. So if the market is telling us that we need more digital based equipments, yes, we are ready and we will be moving forward and introducing more equipments that are in that platform, right? So you were asking about some of the latest products that we have that are working on this digital platform. So like I said, most, if not all of our equipments are basically digital equipments. They are computer-based equipments. Things that are changing if you just talk about like the last 2 years, right? Things that I would say have changed audiology towards digital, definitely, would be Autoscan, which is a ear scanning equipment. Audiologists forever, if we want to make hearing aids, custom ear molds and things like that, we have to take impression with silicone material, and it has to be physically done on a person, and that sent to the manufacturer to be made and things like that. So the Autoscan actually changes it completely. What we do is we scan the ear instead, and that scan is then now available digitally to be sent to any manufacturer anywhere in the world. And that data is always there in the AutoCloud or cloud-based server as well. And this is where we are looking at moving our products in the future, a cloud-based environment, so that healthcare becomes something that can be shared by multiple people. And it's interesting to hear from Dr. Ranjit about the research that they have. And if we have access to that, then the data that WHO has as well improves tremendously, right? So digitization is definitely the way forward, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Shravanand. Going to Dr. Ranjit, since you talked about screening, when we talk about the screening of newborn and how important it is, how are we doing right now? How are we doing at it in India?
We're pretty bad actually. So we are not in nowhere in comparison to the UK or US based or Australia based screening. And in India, the newborn screening is happening in isolation. So we don't have comprehensive screening or a community based screening. So it was not implemented by the government of India very effectively as of now, or even the government of states very effectively as of now. So there is in isolation, every hospital, 1 or 2 hospitals here and there, they do screening, but we don't have the pooling of the data. Okay. Now, the important question in screening, the problem with us is, are we sticking to the standards? Are we sticking to the JCH norms? That's the most important thing. If you ask me, I mean, we don't stick to those standards. Number two, we are trying our level best to stick to the standards. Now, the problem is we have to set our own standards for India, because which is very clear, because the JCH norms the benchmarks has to be totally different for the country here. So the most important thing need to be answered here is we really need to have a universal newborn screening, that is, which is done across the state, across the country, or across a specific village or a taluk or a district. So that data is missing. So we really cannot say how many children are born deaf with permanent hearing loss or late onset of hearing loss, because we don't track them. That's the most important thing. So the second most important thing is, as I told you, we doing pretty bad in the newborn screening comparatively. Now, the newborn hearing screening is very important in this country for one specific reason, that the solutions for the hearing loss are already in place. For example, if a child in the state of Tamil Nadu is born with a permanent hearing loss, and the solutions are free. So the government provides free cochlear implant, government provides free hearing aids, government provides free brainstem implants. So the solution is available. The government gives everything at free of cost. But we don't have the patients who, the deserving patients who has to receive those facilities. So if you look at our state-funded cochlear implant program, which was started in the year 2010, it's almost 10 years now. There are more than 5,000, 6,000 children who received cochlear implant under the state-funded scheme. Now, if you look at the average age at implantation for these children is 4.5. This is quite late, right? Now, the cochlear implant is very effective in terms of restoring hearing and restoring language and speech if it has been provided before the age of 18 months or 2 years. But the average age is 4.5. So what's happening, because of which you provide an implant, but the child will not be able to make the best use of the technology what you give. The cost of an implant is close to 5.5 or 6 lakhs of rupees. So, but if you have the newborn screening in place, and if you pick these children by the age of 6 months, and if you implant them by the age of 1 year, the same implant, the same cost, but implanting a child who's 1 year old will do 100 times much better than a child who's been implanted at the age of 4.5 years old. So this is the gap. So now it is the responsibility of the professionals to bridge this gap. So what we have done is, so now we have connected with, we are coming up with a new project which will be launched sooner, that we are connecting different hospitals, private hospitals, in a new scheme. It's not a government scheme, it is a private scheme, where we will do the newborn screening and we'll have a results collectively in one portal. So we will exactly know, how many children are screened and how many children are born and how many children are screened and how many children are referred and how many children are rescreened and how many are diagnosed finally with a hearing loss. So this is a new thing which we have been working for the last 1 year. Actually, it is supposed to be launched by mid of 2020, but due to COVID, it got delayed, and we had the final meeting last Sunday, and it's going to be launched before 30th of May. So, and this, the screening has a lot of hurdles actually. The reason why the screening is not done properly in this country is, one, it's just not having an intention of doing a screening. Okay. Now, parallelly, why we are not able to meet the standards? Number one is the availability of the equipment, availability of the right equipment. You can't use all the OE devices to do the newborn screening. It's not possible. You need to have devices which has got specific standards and specifications to it. And Natus is definitely one such, because I know Natus for a very long time, for almost last 15, 20 years, they were with Algo. And some of my friends who's working in US and UK, I mean, even Natus is used in their NHS programs as well there. So, so that's one thing, the equipment. The second thing is availability of the equipment. And the third important thing is, if this equipment conks off, right, it takes quite a lot of time for the audiologist or the clinic to get it repaired or replaced. So what happens, you see a lot of dot days in your screening program. You don't screen them completely. Right. So these are also important problems why the screening program is not very successful in this country. Right. And the third most important thing is definitely the cost. So people doesn't like to pay for the newborn screening program, but their priority would be just they don't mind standing for 4 hours to get a 400 rupees ticket for 10,000 rupees or 1,000 rupees for a Rajinikanth movie. So the priorities are always different. Yeah, right. So the first and the foremost thing is, as I told you, making things accessible, available and accessible. That is where our focus now. So, and we have changed a lot of I wouldn't say we incorporated new modalities using this digital platform, what I would say is teleaudiology, where we can bridge most of these gaps to achieve the standards in hearing screening, right? For example, 95% of the children who are born has to be screened, only then it is called a good standard of hearing. And among the 95% who have screened, only 4% should be referred. If you have a referral rate of more than 20%, 15%, then it's definitely not a good screening program. Right. Now, the first and the foremost thing, if you can't screen 95% of the people those who have been born, the reasons could be one of the equipment could itself be one of the main reasons. All right. And another thing is availability of the professionals to screen. And it has been considered only the audiologists can do newborn screening program. No, audiologists can monitor the newborn screening program. But we need to have somebody who needs to be trained to learn the nuances in screening, right? Just even keeping a probe, understanding the child and keeping the probe, it's very important for a good screening. So nuances is it's easily you can easily say, you can train the nurse to screen, anybody can, but there are certain nuances in screening. So to be very frank, we did a very pilot study, when we want to get into this project. We identified two hospitals. See, in one hospital, we sent the most experienced audiologists for screening. To another hospital, we sent the postgraduate students of audiology and the intern students of audiology for screening. The percentage of referral rate is high in the hospital where these students, they're audiology students who have done 4 years of audiology, or the postgraduate students. They're just students, inexperienced. When they screen, the referral rate is quite high. When the experienced audiologist screens, the referral rate is quite less. See, look, they're audiologists, both of them. See, these are the nuances. So they have to teach them the nuances in screening. Even this affects the newborn screening program. So there are a lot of things that we need to correct. We have to correct it one step at a time. And if you ask me, this teleaudiology, this digital connectivity has really bridged certain gaps and made things much more easier to close these gaps, whatever we have. But I'm sure in this country, we will discover more gaps. We'll discover new things, but we will sort it out one after another. But to be precise, newborn screening, we are very bad. We will achieve it. We are in the direction because of the digital technology, and we have the solution, and it's a proven solution. We have enough examples to prove the technology works on them. And the last most important thing is, it is so important that we adhere to the international standards and we create benchmarks for developing nations. The standards for developing nations in newborn screening, in my own personal opinion, has to be different from the other international standards, because there are so many differences in the society, the culture, and everything matters a lot. And I'm sure when we achieve this, you will have more and more children getting hearing aids at a very younger age. You'll have cochlear implants at a younger age, and you'll see the speech performances doing very well. So one of my personal vision is, you will never see a deaf school in this country in another 5 to 10 years. There should never be a deaf school. There should be only schools for hearing. And that's possible only by newborn screening.
Dr. Prashant, in what ways does ENT practice get better with screening programs for adults and with newborns?
Yeah, I think Dr. Ranjit has more or less, spoken a lot about the hearing programs, and especially in children. Now, one thing we have to accept the fact that hearing impairment is the third most leading healthcare concern all over the world after hypertension and arthritis. So it's a fairly large burden on economy everywhere. Now, in this part of the world, since insurance has a major stake, everything is insured. All residents of UAE have a healthcare insurance. So everything moves through insurance. When it comes to hearing, majority of the hearing tests are being covered by insurance, thankfully. So the places where they are not covered, people have to pay for it and get the test done, which is fairly less. Now, particularly in adults. Now, since a lot has been spoken about the newborns and kids, let me brief you about the adults and what we are doing about it. We try and follow the CDC guidelines, at least in our place and the area around us, is that all adults have been asked, or rather they are encouraged to do a hearing test at least once in 10 years, which is not much, or at least once in 3 years after an age of 50 years. So this is what we are trying to follow up. In our hospital, like we've been putting up a lot of hoardings, a lot of papers, flyers, questionnaires, even when patients are sitting outside in a waiting room for any OPD about the hearing handicap inventory. So that just kind of screens a person. So if he feels that yes, he's got a hearing issue, he might be directed to my OPD. All my doctors, colleagues, any patient who comes with diabetes, hypertension, people undergoing chemotherapy, they have been, tried to channelize them towards the ENT OPD and why it is important. And you'll be surprised to know that almost 70 to 80% of these patients who turn up actually end up with a hearing issue, and they do look out for the solutions. They were not actually coming to me, but they were going to some other places, some other OPDs, but eventually turned up to me. But then they think, yes, it's a concern, it's a cause for concern, and they look up for the answers. Now, one more important thing which we've been doing is the referral. Our referral systems are very strong. And as I said, thanks to the, again, digitalization. So my every patient gets a unique medical record number. So he has his files are accessible to almost all healthcare professionals. So any patient who comes with let's say an adult with a sudden hearing issue or pertaining to a chronic ear problems or with a trauma, they are immediately directed to the ENT doctor. So in a way, we try to capture all these patients and keep our jobs going. When it comes to children, yes, we are pretty much into the national universal hearing screening programs, and we are pretty strict about it. Almost all deliveries in UAE are hospital deliveries, and they do undergo hearing assessment, which is very good. So that thankfully that's a very good thing which is being followed here. And to summarize, I would say, yes, awareness is very important. We are putting a lot of effort on awarenesses across all stations. Our referral systems are fairly strong. And to put it in this way, now with the help of information technology in hearing healthcare and computerization, we can enhance further clinical care and ensure cost-effective and maintainable hearing services. And one more thing, one more thing I would like to add is that we've trained a lot of non-ENT personnel into doing hearing tests, which is very good, which is really helping us. So not my audiologist doesn't go to all my satellite clinics. So the nurses there, the paramedics there are being trained to do basic hearing assessments. So which is very good, and this is really helping us. So in picking up kids and adults with hearing disorders who are being referred to us.
And if you talk about the expectations from such devices, do you think they meet their expectations?
I think yes, most of them do meet, and especially when it comes to neonates, my only two concerns would be, I think it is more or less the same everywhere. One is auditory neuropathy spectrum disorders, which are again difficult to diagnose, and second thing is very young kids or newborn babies with amniotic fluid in the middle ear. It's kind of otitis media with effusion. So our OAs may not so these are the only two conditions where it might affect. But otherwise, more or less, yes, expectations are fairly met.
Thank you so much, Dr. Prashant.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Dr. Sushant, can we...
are you able to hear me?
Yes, it's perfectly fine
okay,
now.
Great.
Great to have you back. So, okay.
Great. So that's a part of technology as well, I guess.
Yes. Okay, so I'll just repeat the question for you. Sure. How is GenWorks working towards connecting access and affordability with the quality screening?
Right. So firstly, there are 2-3 things that are a part of our DNA and the way we approach things. When we started in 2015, one of the basic tenets of what we wanted to do was look at affordable care, affordable healthcare across the spectrum. And the idea was to enable people to, kind of bring in that affordable care through equipment which doesn't compromise on quality. And that is something that we kind of have been working on. And like I said, one of the major kind of objectives that I have as a person here is to kind of bring in those digital solutions together and enable different care areas. One of those care areas, of course, happens to be hearing care and audiology to a large extent. Again, because of two reasons. One, of course, is because it makes a lot of business sense. Like I think Dr. Ranjit pointed out, Dr. Prashant pointed out previously, that there is a lot of overall load in terms of the capacity of increase in terms of screening, be in terms of people who get affected by it. So the idea, of course, is that it does make business sense, but then how do you kind of increase that affordability? So there are two things that we are trying to do. One is, of course, we're trying to recognize hearing health in a larger context. So we are saying that we will recognize, hearing health as a bigger, component of what causes, disability over a period of time. Second, of course, is looking at adding more training and skilled professionals in the field. So for both of these, of course, we need partners which can do this for us and which are into both the academic as well as are looking at devices which are easy to use, which are scalable and which are digitally enabled, so that the solutions can reach anywhere. And that's what we have been trying to do. So that's the overall DNA of what we are trying to achieve through this. And that's why Natus, which is a known name, which is a known fact in the field of audiology. So that's why Natus comes into the picture. Another is, of course, digital solutions through Quellis as well that we are bringing in. Both of them are meant to increase the footfall, overall footprint of screening, firstly. Second, of course, is we are also looking at a lot of training programs in terms of enabling tier 2, tier 3 markets to kind of look at hearing care as a very important aspect of overall overall health and wellness, wellness kind of vertical. So that's the overall idea. And of course, we're also looking at, because we have a large footprint, we are present in about 550 odd districts, and we have about 450 odd employees. So we are also looking at a lot of equitable distribution of these products and solutions across different areas. So whether it's a small hospital in a tier 4 city, whether it's a hospital in a metro, they should have access to similar equipments, is what we kind of believe in. And that's why we are also enabling a lot of digitization with these solutions coming in. And of course, with all the help at hand, I'm sure we'll get there very soon.
Thank you, Dr. Shashank. Dr. Shravanan, could you tell us how Natus is also using technologies, especially technologies like 3D printing and spectral mapping, to enhance hearing care for patients?
Like I was saying, the Otoscan is something that uses or leverages on 3D printing, because traditionally what happens is when we want to do custom products, we have to take the ear impression, and then that impression needs to be sent to the manufacturer by a courier or post or something like that. And then they will make a negative impression of it. So a lot of times quality might go down, because it depends on the skill of the person or technician that's doing it. It depends on the experience, what material they're using and things like that. So to avoid that, Otoscan basically makes a digital copy of the ear, a 3D digital copy. And that 3D scan, an exact scan of the ear, is sent to the manufacturer directly over a cloud server, which is of course secure. And the manufacturer then just has to print out with the 3D printer, and it's a very fast process. So things that usually takes about 2 weeks or 3 weeks for it to go up and down now takes about 3 to 4 working days for it to be manufactured, right? So from the point where you take an impression to the point where the manufacturer is able to send you a ready product, which is accurate because it's now printed directly from the impression, nothing else has been manufactured out of it. So that is the leverage that we need. So this depends on a lot of technologies that are established now, like 3D printing, cloud-based databases and things like that. Previously, of course, these are not accessible and they are expensive and things like that. So it doesn't come to us in that sense. But with the current technology state, it has become very affordable. The printers themselves have come down in size, so a lot of manufacturers are able to do it in-house, in the country, in the region kind of thing. And it can be done very fast in that sense. The other thing that interests me a lot in audiology is giving the audiologists the tools to give affordable and quality healthcare, right? So one interesting thing that we always think about is like when we do balance assessments, we traditionally what we need are a lot of equipment that are very expensive. It would need around 100 to 150,000 US dollars to set up an equipment facility. You need rotary chairs, you need light bars, you need a lot of equipment in that sense, which are big, bulky, and you need specialized, trained personnel to run all these tests, right? So the general audiologists, although they are trained during their courses, may not be able to practice it in their real life practice because the equipments are too expensive and are only found in certain hospitals. So what we did was we brought in an equipment that is just goggle based, ICS Impulse, which you just connect to your laptop and you could do the basic VNG test, you could do the basic positional test, you could do the VHIT test. And this equipment by itself is very cheap. It's like probably less than, I don't know, 10,000, 15,000 USD at the most, right? It should be less than that, depending on the market. So this brings that accessibility to a lot of audiologists. And in countries like India, where it's like huge, I mean, when I was in India, traveling from one city to the other takes hours of drive, you know. So you can't be expecting a patient to drive from one city to the other just looking for these equipments. So a lot of the smaller cities, a lot of the smaller hospitals need to have these equipment. So if they are able to assess locally, and then that data is also digital. So if they are stuck and it's very specialized kind of cases, it can always be transferred to another hospital which is more advanced, tertiary level, and the specialist there can then take over, all done digitally. So this is the vision that I think Natus as a manufacturing company has to bring down the affordability factor, to bring down the accessibility factor, and all this done with the latest technology, with the latest digitization and things like that.
Thank you. Dr. Ranjit, coming back to you, you have been a part of occupational screening for population through MRF. Could you tell us some of your learnings through this project and your future vision through it?
Let me tell you what we do now as a project. Now we know that there is so much of occupational hazards, especially to hearing, and there's also something called the entertainment noise pollution, which is coming up. Now, before that, we should never forget the noise is civilization in this country. You really need, you don't have to go to a specific job where you need to get exposed to noise. You just need to be quiet and there's noise around you all the time. Okay. So the noise pollution is something which does not affect the hearing alone. It also affects the ability to listen, ability to concentrate. It also increases the hypertension. Right. It's all well documented, well published. Right? Now, the point here is now what we need to do is there are a couple of things. Now, unless otherwise, the what do you call it, the regulations or the laws are very strict on it. It's very difficult to implement in this country. Otherwise, it's difficult to follow. Nobody follows the norms. So, as a project, what we do is we identify certain industries, we partner up with those industries, and then we do the hearing screening and hearing diagnostic for the employees of those industries. Now what we tell them is no employee is going to be happy hearing that, because of your industry, this man has got a hearing loss. No. So you really have to get into a very good balance of diagnosing and counseling, and that is very important. Now, no employee is also interested to lose his job just because he's got a hearing loss. So it is both the ways. So if you remember, in the year 2010 or 8, something like that, we screened all the employees of a very famous, magazine company. They're very famous all over the country. They have close to 1,800 employees over there. And all of them have some form of hearing loss, and just simply because they're exposed to the machines in printing press. Now, if I tell them you need to wear your EPDs, ear protective devices, they said no, they don't want to wear it because they have certain, they have to listen to certain sounds in that machine, which will indicate them about whether everything is going right or wrong. And the problem is when you have a hearing loss and you're transferred from that position to another position where the noise level is very less, or there's no noise, or you may even, so nobody is interested in even knowing that they have a hearing loss, or to reveal to their the employer that they have a hearing loss. So these are the problems that you face. But the point here is, right, we need to really strike a good balance in this, and because we need to educate them that hearing loss is not just losing hearing. Hearing loss is losing your entire lifestyle. Okay. Now, what we have done is, one part of the story is we are tying up with the big industries. Another part of the interesting story, what we do is, now we adopt villages now. So what we do, we go to a village, we set up a hearing center there. Okay. Now we set up that hearing center and we map the entire village. So we get the database of everybody in the village who has hearing loss, who has speech problem, language problem, attention deficit problem, auditory processing disorders, everything. So now we have identified a village. We have mapped the complete village now. We have the complete database of the village. Now the next level is, we are now in the phase of intervention in the village. The phase of intervention in the village is, now we are setting up a hearing center there. Now what will happen when we set up a hearing center there? Everybody in the village will know where they have to go if they have a hearing. Otherwise, this village is almost 50 kilometers outside Chennai. Nobody from the village will come to the city to get their hearing test. Now, at least now when I have a center there, everybody knows when they have a hearing problem, where to go, to whom to connect. The moment they go there, they connect, then there is a system in place to help them out. Right. So the biggest problem is awareness. The second biggest problem is availability. You make things available and you are connected with the available system, and you establish a system among yourself. The moment the patient reaches there, then they are in your system. Then you know what to do. You can follow up on them. So the project is on community-based hearing care centers. And that this is called the service delivery. The service delivery model of the hearing care will also change along with the digital technology, what you have. And Dr. Prashant was telling how the hearing healthcare is being systematically done through the insurance system and other CDCs and stuff. But that's a very small country, and it's a very small group of population that they can do it. Right? But India is different. And India is too much of democracy when it comes to healthcare. Now they make their own decisions. It's very difficult to, streamline things. Because I go to village every month. Prashant knows that very well. Dr. Prashant knows it very well. As a part of my 2 camps every month, I go to 2 villages every 15 days to create awareness and to help children with hearing impairment. And if anybody in that village needs a cochlear implant, we provide a free cochlear implant. We do these camps. And some of the doctors also come along with the audiology team for the camps. If we screen, if we see 150 children in that village, 40 of them will have a hearing problem. Among the 40, at least 10 people need a cochlear implant. We provide free food, we provide free transportation, we provide free stay in the hospital, we provide free everything free for them, including implants, complete point A to point B to point C, everything is free. Despite among 10 people, you'll only see 2 people ending up for the treatment. 8 of them won't. Right. So where is the major roadblock? Not in the technology, it is reaching the people. That is the major roadblock. And that is where the digital thing is going to help us. So that is where what we thought is, even to make use of the digital platform, make use of the digital technology, what we have, you need to change the way of service delivery. A service delivery has to be totally different. And this is a pilot project. So we are establishing, or we are developing a model. Once we develop this model in this village, and this model can be rolled out to any village in this country. So once you have the model, it is easy to follow. The biggest problem is we don't have an effective service delivery model. So that is what we are building now. So if you ask me what Murph is doing with the occupational screening or community-based screening, so we have just moved out from occupational screening to community-based screening. Right. So the reason why we moved it from occupation to community-based screening is, you go to a factory, you may have 100 employees from 10 different villages. Absolutely, again, you lack data. Right? You only have a data on that particular people in the factory, not the whole thing. So what we do is we target on villages. I'm sure everybody in the village will be doing some kind of occupation. So occupation is mandate. So they're doing different types of occupations. So we have moved our concept from occupation-based to community-based. And this will and this is where the service delivery model, what we believe in, is going to change the society. And this is how we need to change it along with the digital thing. This is where we need to take the digital thing. So I need to create a contact point. The moment the contact point is established in that village, the rest all will be taken care of. So this is our thing. So we are almost through with 70% of our project model. We need another 6 months time. In another 6 months, then we'll have the first version of the model. And of course, we'll run this model for another 1 or 2 years and see how we patch up all those, stuffs which, we'll tie up loose ends. And then we'll have a perfect model which, can be rolled out to any villages, anywhere in this country, anywhere in the developing countries. It should work.
Thank you, Dr. Ranjit. That is instead very noble, and I'm sure the accessibility and affordability factors also meet in here. Dr. Sushant, could you tell us about GenWorks' plan towards making screening of hearing impairment and ENT solutions more accessible? And what is the commitment going forward?
Right. So the commitment is very simple. I think what I touched upon previously as well, that what we want to do is we want to ensure that solutions are able to reach everywhere, and it is not dependent on expertise. So that's, I think, what we are trying to achieve. And I think Dr. Ranjit very clearly pointed that out as well, that it is not necessary for somebody to be, there who has, 500 degrees and, goes to a solution in a village. Once, you set up a model, it works well, then it becomes very easy to replicate. Then you can replicate it anywhere. So that's the truth with success, right? So once you succeed at one point, you can replicate that success easily. But that has to come from a single place where you kind of put in your efforts, see what's working, what's not working. A lot of time, the factors are not even monetary; they're cultural, like he said, right? So a lot of times, those things also need to be overcome. So that's, I think, is what we are trying together. We are enabling those kind of solutions because essentially audiology will have 25, 30, 35 odd products. So the first idea is, of course, to pick and choose the right kind of context for population, right kind of context in terms of solution and product, put it at the right place, see what kind of success is it showing, and then kind of replicate the solution. That is what we are trying to achieve through this. Of course, the second thing that I mentioned earlier as well was that it should not be dependent on expertise, and we are doing that with other digital solutions as well, whether it is critical care, or whether it has to do with screening, cancer screening for that matter. So all of those things, also what we're trying to do is enable simple connected devices which can go anywhere. It's not dependent on transport. It is not dependent on expertise. You can just pick this device, put it in a small box, go anywhere, get people screened, so that more people, at least once you're able to catch the disease, whether it is an end-stage kidney disease or whether it is hearing solution, so you're able to catch that disease, and then you're able to work on it and make a population overall move towards a more healthier environment. So that's the overall idea, and that I think is very well articulated by most of the panelists, that what we're trying to do is technology is always an enabler. I mean, I'm a doctor, but good days I can go to save my life purely because I genuinely believe that technology is a very important enabler. And in healthcare, we have seen in piecemeal, we have seen some kind of progress, but it has been unprecedented. After COVID, we are seeing a lot of gaps being fulfilled very, very quickly. The adoption has increased very quickly, and more importantly, both the doctors and the patients, the healthcare seeker, both of these people certainly have had that kind of kind of acceptance towards digital technologies. Earlier, it probably would be a little alien to just connect with a doctor on a screen. That's not the case anymore. A lot of people, what we are seeing is they're able to articulate their problems better also on screen, and doctors are able to provide that solution as well. And same is the case with screening going forward. I think we won't require very expert people to go in and kind of, because we don't have that expertise. It's not possible anywhere in the world. Smaller or larger populations, and for larger populations, it becomes even more important to train the right set of people with the right kind of equipment, connected to the right people. That's what we're trying to achieve. And I think with GenWorks, with the kind of growth we have seen, with the kind of footprint we have, that's the direction we are going in, and we are very fortunate to get the right kind of people at the right time, to get the right kind of I'll say partners at the right time, who kind of share the same vision and are able to drive this through. And with of course with more awareness in terms of hearing screening, in terms of hearing health, I think we'll reach there faster for sure. And once that happens, I think of course what we'll also see is that more of cultural factors also being taken care of. So that's what we want to do, and I hope this is a very aligned, clear goal for everybody. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Sushant. My last question is to Mr. Shravanan. In the view of COVID-19, healthcare workers and the end users are becoming more conscious about infection control. So what is Natus's view on the equipment manufacturing here?
Okay. We do see that now that the doctors, the audiologists are becoming more aware of infection control. And of course, patients themselves are being more aware of how infection happens and things like that. So as manufacturer, we have always put a premium on making sure that our equipments can be disinfected safely, and the materials used are hardy enough so that even when you use strong disinfectants, they will last throughout their specified lifetime. So if we look at certain equipments that have lots of buttons, we've tried to reduce the buttons to touch screens or to buttons that are fully sealed. So you can use wet-based disinfectant and just wipe them and they'll be fine, right? So that's one of the efforts that we make into making sure that our equipments are easily disinfected very quickly. Then the other thing is things that come into touch with the patient. How do we kind of like make it disposable? For example, a few months back, we introduced cover for the headphones so that every single patient just uses that one cover and then it's thrown away. So you don't spend time trying to disinfect the headphones, for example, right? And it sounds simple, but the thing is like with audiology equipments, you always have to think about like whether sound will be blocked by these covers and things like that. So it needs specific engineering to do all these things. So I think that's where the manufacturers, no matter what brand as well, has to move forward and introduce these kind of solutions so that they can be used even post-COVID, even post-vaccination, things like that, to prevent other infections from even starting to begin with, right? So that is a focus that I think everyone should do and need to continue doing from now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your views and exemplary work that you have been striving towards. We will now begin with the question and answer session to address some of the queries that we've received from our attendees. So the first question is from Dr. Scott. Could you tell us about how we can handle congenital anomaly hearing loss?
See, the congenital anomaly there are different types because basically it depends on where the anomaly is. The anomaly could be in the external ear, the anomaly could be in the middle ear, anomaly could be in the inner ear, anomaly could be beyond the inner ear. Okay, so the most important thing is to identify where the anomaly is and what is the impact of it. There are two types of anomaly. One is a visible anomaly and another one is invisible anomaly. The visible anomaly is anomalies that you can just visualize. Some children may have microtia and anotia, all those things. And some children may have stenosed ear canal. The ear canal is closed, it is not open. And these are very visible. The invisible anomaly are hypoplastic auditory nerve, cochlear anomalies. There are different types of cochlear anomalies. Now they are invisible. But the paradox of audiology here is when you do an audiometric test on a child who is born with normal cochlea but dysfunctioning, a cochlea which is anatomically normal but functionally, physiologically not functional. Now you do all the audiological tests, have the results what you get from all this test, and you do the same tests, all the audiological tests on a child who's born with no cochlea. The results will be the same. There's no difference. So based on the audiological evaluations, it's very difficult to identify the inner ear anomaly. But that's where the audiology has to go in hand with radiology. So the audiology is actually evolving. Audiology is branching out into specialities and now into super specialities. Now, the radiology has now been part of audiological curriculum. Right. So this is very, very important to diagnose because you have a child without the cochlea inside and you have profound hearing loss and you put a hearing aid. What does it mean? It's nothing. It's just a piece of weight there. Right. And this child does not even need a cochlear implant. The child may need a brainstem or a child may need a different type of electrode in a cochlear implant. So the point is, the diagnosis is the most intellectual part of any medical treatment. Treatment is all available. Treatment is all defined, A, B, C, and D. But you only need to choose, who needs A, who needs B, who needs C. So the point is to be very precise. How do we handle the anomalies? It all depends on what type of anomaly. But today, whatever the anomaly may be, lost hearing can be restored. That is for sure. We have enough technology for that. So the best way is the child has to go in for radiological evaluation. The protocol in MERF is any child who comes with a hearing loss and a speech delay, they have to undergo radiological test along with the audiological test. Because we have seen a lot of patients where the radiologically misdiagnosed. There is also a lot of possibility there can be radiological misdiagnosis. Now, you have a lot of children where the radiology says there is no eighth nerve. The inner ear is, the eighth nerve is absent. Now, audiologically, we have proved that there is a presence of eighth nerve. So, the fallacies are always in science because the science has not reached a perfection to understand how the auditory system or any human system is functioning. So the thing is to overcome the fallacies is what the cross-modal checks and balance principle that what we have. So yes, anomalies can be managed depending on the anomaly. For example, if there is an anomaly of the external ear and atresia is closed, you can put a bone conduction device to bypass it and you can give the stimulant. And beyond a certain age of 6 or 7, when the cartilage are fine, then you can even do a, plastic surgery. You can open up the stenosis, you can reconstruct the pin. If you have a middle ear anomaly, yes, that can be reconstructed either surgically or it can be managed with surgical plus a prosthesis inside. If there's an anomaly in the inner ear, based on the cochlear anomaly, based on the anomaly, you can select a cochlear implant. There are implants available with different designs of electrode arrays, which can suit very well with different types of anomalies. If there is no cochlea, then you can put a brainstem implant. If there is no nerve, you can put a brainstem implant. So to restoring hearing, the technology is available, but identifying is the most challenging part. It's a very interesting question. So any anomalies, the hearing loss can be restored. But the intellectual part is identifying.
Dr. Prashant, would you like to add something?
Yeah. Can I think Dr. Ranjit has completely summarized that in today's era, you can't leave a child deaf. There's solution offered for everything. And audiology workup and imaging both go hand in hand. With the kind of imaging and the audiology workup we have, we can pick up kids with the anomalous hearing. And one more thing which I would like to add is, especially being here, is genetic workup. A lot of time parents are in doubt that this child has been born deaf, what are my chances of the other kids who are going to be born in future be having hearing issues? So yes, there are very simple genetic tests. You can just do a blood test and find out, yes, what are the chances of the other child being born with deafness or not. So those things can also be applied. So this is what I wanted to add. Maybe genetic tests can also be put into it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Prashant. Moving on to the next question. This is from Dakshna Murthy. She wants to ask, since during this COVID times, most of the children are dependent only on technology for the schooling, and even for the employees, they are just on the calls for online and even telecalling jobs, which are stretched to over 8 hours now. What is your suggestion to strengthen hearing? Okay. So, what would you suggest for people who just don't have a choice but take the calls, keep listening? What are the things that can avoid the damage? Is what the person wants
Well,
to know.
that's a very interesting question. Very interesting question, because off late after the COVID, we see a lot of patients, youngsters with tinnitus and migraine. Now, the migraine, one of the commonest trigger of migraine is stress. We have millions of reasons why you can trigger stress. So the people haven't learned how to handle stress, especially during this COVID situation, because you have online, the quality of the speaker may not be good. He can't understand. He has to compete. They have multiple things. And what has happened is, because of this continuous hearing, a lot of people have onset of hearing loss, and a lot of people have tinnitus. So tinnitus is again a consequence of an impaired auditory system. Now, our tips are, number one, never use a headphone, or never use your phone very close to your ears. Always try to use a speakerphone. Second thing, the volume setting that you have it on your phone or on your system, whatever you use to listen, should be at a level where the person who's sitting next to you should not hear it. No, we tend to keep the volume so high, the person who's sitting next to you can also hear it. Okay, the golden rule is, you should not hear noises more than 75 dB to 80 dB. So the golden rule is very simple. It's not going to change whether you use your online or your any noises. It's just 8 hours. You should not hear sounds more than 8 hours and beyond this level. So you just need to stick to that. So that's what is important. The second thing is, you need to be disciplined very well. Now, if you think your profession is very important, you need to listen to the speeches, you need to listen to online meetings 8 hours a day, then you should rest your hearing for some time. So what people do after this online meeting, they go into this, watch movies, loud noises, entertainment. You're taxing your auditory system. So that's the thing. So the first and foremost thing is, just reduce the noise level and sit in a very quiet room when you sit in a meeting. Don't sit in a very noisy room for a meeting, because it's very difficult for you. Naturally has to raise your speaker level, the volume level. The second thing is, when you sit in a quiet room, keep your volume level very comfortable, that only you hear it, nobody else hear it. Just a very comfortable. The third most important thing is, and try to give rest to your ear. Just be quiet and just rest. The fourth is quite common, that everybody says that eat properly, do exercise, keep yourself healthy. That's very important. So these are the tips that we give it to them. The fifth most important thing, which I quite commonly tell them, is the world is not going to end just because of the COVID. Things will all come up. There's no point in taking up stress. Things will go on, life will go on. Don't build up stress on it. It's just a small phase that we are all going through. Just take it very positively and go ahead. Never build up stress. So these are the factors that actually trigger in hearing loss, actually trigger in tinnitus, triggers in attention deficit, So these are some of the tips we give it to them. But it's quite evident, a lot of people come with a lot of complaints of tinnitus and the migraine. We have seen it quite often now.
The next question is from Mr. Satish. India being a huge market, how do we synergize all the leading hearing aid manufacturers to have one single platform for ordering delivery by anyone who don't have a FOC facility or unaware of the facility in Indian state?
It's a matter of time. It's a matter of time. The hearing aid industry will change soon. Today, that's very interesting because when you wear a hearing aid, it becomes a social stigma. But when you wear your Bluetooth, it's a fashion statement, right? So the hearing aids are going to be built in your PDAs, your mobile phones, and all that. Where wearing a device becomes a fashion statement for you, right? That means we're going to build in the hearing aids within your mobile phone, right? Where the mobile phone will limit the output level based on your hearing needs. So what does hearing aid do? Hearing aid basically limits, amplifies, and suppresses the input level based on an individual needs. That's what hearing aid does. So for certain sounds, it's amplified. For certain sounds, it suppresses, it balances it. That can be easily done on a mobile phones because hearing aid is a very small chip, and mobile phone, the processing stuffs are 100 times or 1,000 times much faster than the hearing aid chip is supposed to do. The whole hearing aid industry is going to change, and everything is going to come online. So once it's going to be digital on your phone, I think you can do million things on it, and this will answer his question. So it will all be unified. So soon people will be writing codes for hearing aids. It's no more hardware. Hearing aids will all be software.
Dr. Saravanan, would you like to add something to it?
Well, that's an interesting view actually, and yeah, it's something that we are seeing happening with Apple and things like that. But the other view of it as well is that the big manufacturers that we have with hearing aids, they are putting in R&D as well, and customization is happening. So things that are very small, put in your ears, and they are able to also do sensors for monitoring your health, whether you fall and things like that. So they are evolving in that sense. So maybe it becomes in one way something that's integrated if you just need an amplifying device, and in another way if you need a sensor that is monitoring your health as well. So then it's in a device that can do everything in that manner. So that's another way of looking at it. So yeah, multiple ways. But I think the baseline question was whether the manufacturers themselves will integrate and things like that. They have, from used to have like 20 large companies, now there's like 5 or 6 of them. So probably with the digitization and things like that, we will see them merging more and adapting or using similar platforms of ordering and things like that. But it will take some time, I guess. So it's moving fast, but it'll take some time.
The next question is from Mr. Pant. Is there any modern treatment or device available for this?
A device for
what?
I believe he means for hearing impairment. Any modern treatment or device available for hearing impairment? That's all he's asking. We can address both for children as well as for adults, if there is.
Well, the modern is this. The technology is changing. For example, you take cochlear implant is the same, but there is every month there is new things that's changing in cochlear implants. Right? Hearing aids are the same, but there are new things coming up in hearing aids. So what is modern? Modern is like adapting to, for example, give a simple example. We have got hearing aids today which has got a Bluetooth connectivity, which can connect to your phone, which can connect to your television, which can connect to your music system. Everything is possible now, and this is modern, right? You have one device which can connect to 10 systems in your house, and the sound is very crystal clear. There is no energy loss. The noise is being secluded completely. The signal is much better. So this is modern. So a lot of modernization is coming in every month, if I say, because we have 4 major cochlear implant companies, and 3 of them are the top notch. And every month they have something new to tell, right? And this way or the other, right? So this will go on. This will go on. And if you ask me what is modern to me is one of the interesting thing which I came across 5 years ago, when I had a meeting in Gothenburg with the university, is they coming up with a new technology called optogenetics. So optogenetics is We all know we hear when there is a sound. But when I throw a light on your ear, can you hear? So how can you make the ear sensitive for light? Right. And the reason why this came up is for patients with cochlear implant, the delivery is electrical signal. There's only so much you can do with electrical signal. You cannot manipulate the electrical signal. I mean to say it's a spectral and the temporal resolution of the electrical signal is very poor compared to optical. So instead of delivering the sound electrically, you can deliver the sound optically. When you deliver the sound optically, the spectrum of the information, the temporal integrity is much more precise. Right. For which what you have to do is you have to inject a virus, and this virus will change your receptor. Right. And I've been following this research for the last 7 years. It's progressing very well. It's progressing very well. I think this is modern. So you will have a small device inside, and then that will just convert the sound into light, and then the quality of the hearing with cochlear implant will be much better than the quality of hearing with cochlear implant what we have today. That's what has been projected. So these are the modernizations that will happen. And another important modernization is, you have an implant, which can connect to your Google. Right. So you want to ask for directions that will tell you internally. You go right, go left. This is modernization. So the moment everything comes on a PDA platform, it's a Pandora box. You can do multiple things with it. You won't be surprised. You will have a hearing aid or a cochlear implant which will filter out criticisms and only amplify good comments.
I wish so. Anyone else who would like to add to that question? Okay. Moving on to the last question. This question is from Mr. Satish. Does Natus deal with a 3D printer which could be purchased by hearing aid manufacturers?
Okay, currently we don't manufacture 3D printers. We do work closely with a lot of large 3D printing companies worldwide. So they're quite established. So we work in partnership with them. They can access our data and things like that. For India, GenWorks is currently looking to engage one of these companies to supply these 3D printers locally there. So we have been in contact with that, and I think there will be some news soon on this. Thank you.
Rashmi, just to add on to this and to the previous thing, there's something to modern. Now, the new thing is, we used to do pinna reconstruction. There was a question, what happens to anomaly, how we handle anomalies when a child is born without the external ear, the pinna, this one. Now, you can do bioprinting. Bioprinting is something which is very modern, right? And when the Natus has their, the Autometrics where you scan the ear canal for 3D printing of the ear molds, for making ear molds, then I found a different use of it. So what it is, we are now trying to scan the entire pinna dimension, and we are trying to see if we can use that data for bioprinting. Right. So now we have tied up with the university here, which we work very closely. We do a lot of research with the university. I went to the research lab of the university, and I saw the university has got an excellent 3D printing machine. Okay. So funded by the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. And they do the 3D printing for different type of stuffs. But I asked him, can you do this 3D printing for this pinna? They said they could do it, but they need this data, the digital data for that. So we have taken some images. I'm just working with this university if we can do the 3D printing of the pinna, and if that comes in, I think the AutoScan can be used not just for making ear molds. It can also use the AutoScan to make pinnas. So bioprinting is coming up, and bioprinting is it's a matter of time. So 5 years ago, the government set up a wonderful plant in Visakhapatnam, Vizag, for a very good bioprinting labs. But suddenly it's not taking up. I think that somebody else has also started working. Now we have started working with our university lab, whether we can do the 3D printing first. So once we come out with a successful 3D printing, then we'll start looking at, we'll give a proposal to start a bioprinting lab later. But this AutoScan is very useful for that. I found a new use of this AutoScan in that. And I see a great future in that. More than what I see in ear modes. That's my personal thing, but can also be used for that.
Thank you, Dr. Ranjit. Well, that brings us to the end of a very insightful session and a Q&A. Now, before we conclude, we would request all the panelists to give us one brief message that you would like the audience to take away from this session, starting from you, Dr. Sushant.
So, I mean, the message is very clear from my side. I mean, what we're trying to do is the product can be anywhere. It could be run by anyone, but the patient has to be, the solution has to be available to the patient, irrespective of their geographical location. This is what we're striving to do with all the partners. Thank you.
Dr. Prashant.
I think in today's era, the message would be anyone who's got a hearing issue should approach a healthcare professional or an audiologist, get themselves screened or identify what exactly they've been having and get treatment for that.
Dr. Ranjit.
The statement is this: if a child is born deaf, it is nobody's fault. If the child remains deaf, it's all of our fault. It's all of us who's responsible for it. Audiologist, I'm responsible. As a ENT surgeon, he's responsible. As a public person, it's a social responsibility. You may not be a hearing healthcare worker or a medical professional, but still you have a responsibility, right? So that is where we need to focus on. I can be the best, Prashant can be the best, Natus can be the best equipment, Genworth can deliver. Unless otherwise the society changes, the mindset changes, every one of us are useless in this society.
So true.
So that's the message. So don't carry, we need to spread the message. We need to look at a larger picture if you really want to see a change. That's my message.
Mr. Sravanan.
I think the message is what we have been trying to say throughout this session as well. The awareness needs to be built up. The knowledge has to be built up. So avail yourself to all the digital platforms that educate us, teach us what to do and how to move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your exciting and very insightful discussion and the great takeaways. I hope that the audience has also enjoyed this. Well, we have a lot to discuss, but for this panel discussion, we will leave it here. Appreciate all the experts for joining us today, and a big thank you to all the attendees for tuning in. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you for inviting. Thank you.